Hello, I'm Dr. Mikey Mewborn, and this is Church Ministry. Today we're looking at the topic, the conflict manager. It's good to be with you today. This is a wonderful topic because everyone has dealt with conflict at one time or another. It's actually inevitable that you will deal with it in your lifetime if you work with people, because people bring in different biases, they bring in different backgrounds, different cultures, and when those cultures come together, there's usually some form of tension. And when people have certain ideas of the way things should go, when they're shared openly and another person shares their ideas, it can quickly cause conflict. And so, how do you deal with that? In other words, what does the Bible say about dealing with conflict? So we're going to look at that today, and we're going to look at it from the perspective of how do people manage conflict, how do they work with it or work through it, and also what does the Scripture tell us about dealing with these difficult things. And so it's good to be with you today. Let's begin our study. Hello and welcome to Church Ministry. Today we're looking at the topic, the conflict manager. We're using the outline notes from Kenneth Gainwell, known in his book as Team Leadership. It's good to be with you today. Let's jump into our study. I want to begin by focusing in on the leadership assumptions about conflict. And these assumptions are not necessarily good, bad, or anything like that, but there are things that you can assume about conflict. Number one, conflict is inevitable where people are interested and involved. So if there is a group of people together and they are involved in something, that's a part of what that group is connected with, then there is going to be some form of conflict at some point in time. And so that's just inevitable. Conflict accelerates as change accelerates. So when people begin to change an objective, or they begin to make a move towards something new or different, or maybe pull away from what they once did, such as a church is taking a new step in a new direction, maybe it's with the style of worship that they have, then there's going to be conflict that's involved in that, or a form of tension, and it really does accelerate as things go on. Conflict is not inherently destructive or constructive. So it's not necessarily breaking down something or building something up. It's just a part of what happens. It's a part of who we are, especially when we're involved in something that we care about, or people are involved in something they care about. Emotions are involved in that, because if we're looking at something such as the church world or being involved in a small group, that means that my personal beliefs are involved. And with my personal beliefs, there's something very personal and emotional about that. And when somebody comes against it, or questions what I feel about something or what I was taught growing up, it's going to create a form of conflict. That doesn't mean it's destructive or constructive, but it does mean that there is some form of conflict and it will need to be dealt with. Conflict is best handled by diplomacy and negotiation. If there is any way to get through something, it's to do it where everybody feels safe during that process, that there's not a place where people feel hurt or they're hurting because conflict has happened again. Everybody wants to run for the hills so they can get away from conflict. And then conflict resolution can be taught. It can be taught, and it actually should be taught by a group leader or someone who's overseeing an organization. It's vital that they help train people how to deal with conflict in the workplace or in the place where they're volunteering. Because if you don't train people how to do it or teach them how to do it, when it comes up, they're not going to know how to handle it. And when they do handle it, it'll be done in the wrong way. So these things are important. Next, let's look at leadership strategies for handling conflict. Confrontation. In Matthew chapter 18, verses 15 through 17, it reads, "If your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he listens to you, you have gained your brother. But if he does not listen, take one or two others along with you, for that every charge may be established by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. If he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if he refuses to listen even to the church, let him be to you as a Gentile or a tax collector." This is an interesting passage because it's telling us how we need to handle conflict. And if somebody sins against us personally, we need to go to them, in the church world especially. And if it can't be fixed by the one-on-one confrontation, it needs to be dealt with by others coming and being involved. Then if it can't be dealt with there, then there needs to be more people involved. And eventually, if you don't get anywhere with it, it needs to go before the church and be dealt with. And this is a form of confrontation. That's the biblical model for that. Also, another strategy for handling conflict is compromise. Compromise is not a word for weakness, defeat, or humiliation. Compromise is an excellent way to settle different differences. We need to be teachable about things. We can see here, be teachable. You are not always right. And we need to understand that. There comes time when it's not our way or the highway, but we need to be willing to learn or to be taught something new. Sometimes we need to be able to agree to disagree about a topic or a subject matter. And so when this takes place, both people have to give a little bit in order for it to take place. So that's a big deal. All right, as we move forward, working through things is another strategy. And you see these two people shaking hands. They're working through it. They're pushing through. Conflict resolution usually takes a great deal of time when done correctly. The idea attacking or withdrawing from someone during conflict often causes more problems between parties. People need to work through their issues. You need to go through it together. And the idea of shaking hands is kind of neat because you're agreeing that you're in this thing, you're connected, you're a part of this, and we're going to go through the idea of getting through the storm, the idea of getting through the fire, whatever it might be. You're making it because you've dressed yourself correctly. Sometimes when I think of this, working through something that's very difficult, I think of a fireman. A fireman is completely shielded from the fire the best he can by the clothing that he has on, by his uniform, and by his helmet, and by his oxygen that he has, and he's equipped to go through a fire. I think as Christians, we are to be fully equipped so that we can go through things with other people. And we need to sometimes just walk through those difficult times hand in hand, helping one another out. And the Bible speaks fairly strongly of this. Another strategy, teaching. Handling conflict does not come naturally to people, so they need to be taught how to do it. Healthy churches and organizations spend a lot of money and time to teach their staff how to work through conflict. One of the great things that a church staff can do, as well as any nonprofit or any organization or any school for that matter, they need to teach their staff how to handle conflict. The conflict manager will do that. They will teach their staff, what do you do in this situation? What do you do in this situation? That's important. This is a great slide here, a great picture. Leaders teach you why and how to do it. Bosses tell you what to do. It's an interesting thought there. Who would you want to follow, the leader or the person that's entitled the boss? And I think you'd want to follow the leader, who could be known as your boss, but it's because they're teaching you why something works and how to do it. And that's the idea with conflict management. We need to be taught how to do it and even shown and have it made clear to us what needs to take place. So that's important. Leadership model for conflict resolution, withdrawing. It is a lose-lose position when people just walk away from one another. In this model, and I'm going to give you 4 models, but this model, when people just walk away, it's a lose-lose position. Some divorces occur because of irreconcilable differences. This is the term often given to couples that withdraw from one another and are not willing to work on the issues at hand. When you do this, you can't solve the issue. It's the idea you're running from your problems. You're running from the issues. Well, what are you going to do when you run away from this one and then the problem rears its ugly head again? Do you run away again? And so you become a serial divorcer, and you just keep running from people. And finally, by the time the fifth divorce, what do you say? Well, gosh, I could have maybe reconciled with my first wife. I could have maybe fixed this stuff. This is what happens in divorces. This is what happens, or marriages. This is what happens with people in jobs. They go from job to job to job because they keep running from their problems. And they need to learn how to handle that. Withdrawing is a terrible model to go by. Also, another model is taking. In all competitions, people usually walk away as winners or losers. Some people take the trophy and others are left defeated. Christian ministry should never feel this way. There should never be this whole focus, I'm either the winner or I'm the loser. Instead, we should work together to help one another. Sometimes if you think of a sporting event, you have these people maybe on one side cheering for their team and their team wins and everybody's excited. You look on the other side and people are devastated and they're crying and they don't know what to do. And they walk out of there. One walks out with just they're walking on a cloud, it seems like, and then the other one would rather crawl out of there because they just feel hurt by this. And it's this idea that you're not coming together. One's broken, one's taken away the trophy. And that's not helpful either in the leadership model for conflict resolution. One just takes away all the valuables or all the goods. And so that's not very good either. So we need to be careful with that. Also, the idea of giving. And this leadership model of conflict resolution is what some people do. They always turn the cheek. And it's a biblical expression for helping others, and we know that. But this is all these people do. They turn the cheek. Somebody asks you for something, you give. You never say no. You just constantly give. No matter what, it's always giving. This model can also become an issue in churches. If 20% of the people do 80% of the work in most churches, those 20%ers will often face burnout, bitterness, or isolation. And what they will do is they will just start to struggle and eventually just begin to pull out because they feel that they're not appreciated. And so you can give and give and give, but before you know it, there comes struggles with that. And if it's not handled properly, there's going to be a lot of hurt. And it's not even healthy for the other people that are around you. If you just constantly give and they don't have to do anything, then they don't have a need for their position either. So if you're taking care of what they're doing or supposed to be doing, then they are not being able to use their gifts because you are trying to take over their areas. And so there's a lot of problems with this as well. It might seem like it's a very good idea for most people. I need to be a giver. I need to take care of this. I need to give my time, my efforts, my money. But maybe we need to let other people do their things. And so instead of trying to always fix the problem and say, no, it's okay, we'll make it work, and I'll just take care of this, maybe there needs to be a better model or a better strategy there. And the best strategy is agreeing. This model focuses on a healthy understanding of conflict resolution. The two parties recognize the issue and agree on the resolution. This is a win-win-win because the two are coming together, different ideas, different mindsets, whatever it might be, a conflict has occurred, and they're saying, you know what, it's okay, we can work through this. Let's learn together and let's agree on a new path or a new focus. And so let's make this work. And I think if you really see that for what it is, you really win people over. You can win over a brother in Christ, a sister in Christ, but at the same time, you're really winning each other over because you're maybe creating some of the best friendships. I've always appreciated when there's a conflict with a middle schooler and another middle schooler, or a high schooler and another high schooler, and there's a conflict, and it just seems that they'll never, ever, ever be able to be friends. And then something happens with one of them. They say, you know what? We can make this work. And they both stand up for what they want, and they both come together and they agree, and they become best friends for the rest of their lives. And you see this happen a lot. because when people are willing to put down their biases and they're willing to put down their differences and say, hey, let's just come together on this. Let's see what this looks like. Then you can go somewhere. And that's the idea of agreeing, that agreement model. All right. Leadership behavior that reduces conflict. Participatory leadership. Jesus never coerced morality. Humans are free moral agents. Spiritual leaders should not force or coerce people to behave in certain ways. Not at all. It should be participatory in the leadership. Liberty is the right to choose. Freedom is the result of the right choice. That quote was given by Jules Renard. As we continue on, we see leadership behavior that reduces conflict. Effective leadership. Leaders challenge the process. Leaders inspire a shared vision. Leaders enable others to act. Leaders model the way. Leaders encourage the heart. This is what leaders really do to help out with conflict and things like that. And so it helps reduce that. If there's one of the things that you can do to help reduce the potential for conflict is to be a great leader. John Maxwell said, a leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. And he's saying, this is how you do it. And I think that's a great thought there. All right. Celebrative leadership. Certain events, certain promotions, certain milestones, certain accomplishments, all these things should be celebrated. So when something is going on or somebody has reached a great milestone in their life with the company, or they've reached a great, or you had a great event, or somebody got a great promotion, you should celebrate those things because those things really matter. And the more that we celebrate people in our organizations, the more people feel that they're a part of an environment that lifts others up. And when you lift others up, it reduces the conflict. It teaches people to lift others up. It's a wonderful thing to think about. Celebrate the success of others. High tide floats all ships. I think that's a wonderful quote there. All right. Another one is vulnerable leadership. A pastor or leader of an organization should be willing to apologize when he or she has made a mistake. Unwilling to do so will worsen the problem and often bring humiliation and shame to all parties involved. Sometimes the greatest thing that leaders can teach is to say, I'm sorry. Sometimes the greatest thing is for them to apologize and to show that, because if they don't, other people won't mimic that either or use that in their daily lives. And so when they hurt somebody, they don't go and make the wrong a right. They just continue and say, oh, they'll get over it. And that can be detrimental to an organization or a church. Communicative leadership. Developmental, educational, supportive, clear communication, and trustworthy. This reduces conflict as well when you communicate well, and it helps develop things. It helps with training and being educational, supportive, of course, and those areas of communication. I love this little cartoon here, and that is why we lift on 3. If you see there, they've dropped this body that the guy is hanging onto his feet there, the guy on the right. And it's just kind of funny when you think about this, because the communication there was somehow wrong. And it caused the guy to go onto the floor. And I just think that's funny. But that can be that can be a terrible conflict there because there wasn't good communication. So it's always good to know what's expected. All right. Well, this has been the Conflict Manager. It's been good to be with you today. Continue on with your studies. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. All right. That concludes this lesson about the Conflict Manager. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson, also taken away some things that will be helpful for you as you continue your journey throughout ministry and throughout life in general. These different helpful hints I know have helped me, and I know that they'll help you as well. But I hope you've enjoyed this, and we'll talk to you soon. God bless you, and bye-bye.